Chapter 10. The House. Marcus packed with the careful thoroughness of a man bracing for a storm. Not the simple, practical packing he did on the singing siren. Shirts rolled tight, boots tucked into corners, everything chosen for usefulness. This was different. This was the packing of a man returning to a place that had once defined him and might try to do so again. Arabella bounced on the bed behind him in a gown Trey had paid a scandalous amount of coin for. Sparkly, proper, ridiculous. She looked like a little heiress. She did not move like one. Marcus folded a fine shirt into his trunk and said, for the third time, "You will not climb the drapes." Arabella beamed. "I won't climb the drapes. And you will not threaten anyone with a knife." "I won't threaten anyone," she said brightly, and Marcus heard the omission like a bell. He paused, looked at her. Arabella widened her eyes. Angelic. "Unless they touch me." "Arabella?" She hopped down and came close, looking up at him with perfect seriousness. "Papa, I promise to behave to make you happy, but only as long as nobody touches me. If somebody touches me, all bets are off." Marcus exhaled slowly. 6 years on a pirate ship did that to a child. It taught her that the first person to hesitate died. "Fair," Marcus said finally, and Arabella grinned as if he'd given her candy. As he closed the trunk, something cold slid through his mind. Memory, sharp as steel. Brother Finnegan, in the Temple of the North Star, pressing the certificate into his hands. "Hold on to that. As long as you're married, your father has no claim on you." He crossed the cabin to the small locked box Trey kept under the desk. The one with papers, maps, letters of marque, forged and real. Trey watched him from the doorway, expression carefully neutral. Marcus pulled out the marriage certificate. It was creased at the edges from being admired and reread. Ink slightly smudged where his fingers had touched too often. Green's signature as witness, still bold at the bottom. Marcus rolled it carefully, as if it were a map worth more than gold, and slid it into an unused map tube. Then he packed it. He felt better immediately, in the way a man felt better when he knew where his knife was. Trey didn't comment. She only stepped closer and said lightly, "Planning to blackmail your father with paperwork?" Marcus glanced up. Planning to survive him. Trey's mouth twitched. Good. Trey spent significant coin dressing them both. Marcus watched her do it with a tightness in his chest he couldn't name. She fussed over Arabella's hair, tying ribbons with hands that were better with blades than bows. She chose Marcus's coat herself. Dark, expensive, cut to make him look like what he was supposed to be. She adjusted the collar, smoothed the front, checked the fall of the fabric. "You look like trouble," Trey murmured. Marcus tried to smile. "I always did. I wouldn't have become a pirate captain's toy otherwise." Trey's eyes flicked to the silver bracelets on his wrists, the permanent ones that no cuff key could undo. They broke the noble image like a crack in porcelain. Trey touched them once, thumb brushing the metal. Possessive, grounding, a reminder. Then she stepped back. Her jaw was tight. Her teeth itched. Marcus could see it, the way she clenched and unclenched as if fighting the urge to do something reckless. Letting them go somewhere she could not follow was scraping her raw. She disguised the worry as irritation, as always. "Green," Trey snapped, turning abruptly. "That livery better fit, or you'll look like a dock rat pretending to be a footman." Green, standing stiffly in brand new footman's clothes, looked like a man being strangled by propriety. "Aye, Captain." "You look ridiculous," Trey added. Green's eyes narrowed. "So do you, fussing like a mother hen." Trey blinked, offended, then laughed once, sharp. "Fair." When she turned away, Marcus saw her staring out the cabin window toward the port, distant and calculating. She was thinking. She was always thinking. Marcus knew that look. It meant Trey was already searching for a way to keep the life and lose the bounty. A way to be safe without becoming small. If a way existed, she would find it. They disembarked at Port Isenton. Green went first down the plank, uncomfortable in his livery and glaring at anyone who looked too long. Arabella followed, her dress sparkling in the sun, her posture perfect. Marcus came last, finely dressed and groomed, hair tied back neatly, his face too pretty to ever be entirely respectable. Only the silver at his wrists broke the illusion. Trey stood on the dock, hands clasped behind her back like a captain reviewing cargo. She did not touch them in public. She did not kiss Marcus. She did not kneel to Arabella. But when Arabella turned and waved, Trey lifted 2 fingers to her brow in a sailor's salute. Arabella saluted back with grave precision. Marcus's chest tightened. The hired carriage was waiting. They climbed in, trunks already strapped on behind. As the carriage rolled away, Marcus looked back once. The singing siren sat in the harbor like a promise. Trey stood on the dock until the crowd swallowed her. It was only an hour by carriage to the Ison estate. The road wound along the coast, the sea flashing blue through breaks in the trees. Marcus watched it with the odd feeling of being in a story he'd once read and abandoned halfway through. Arabella sat opposite him, legs swinging. "All right," Marcus said, bracing himself. "There are rules, again, so you do not forget." Arabella leaned forward, eager. "It is not appropriate to murder people even when they deserve it," Marcus began. Arabella's face fell. "But—" "Or curse," Marcus added. Arabella sighed dramatically. "Or climb things," Marcus finished. Arabella's eyes widened. "Not even—" "Not even," Marcus said firmly. Arabella slumped. Then, after a moment, she sat up straight again, solemn. "I promise to behave, to make you happy." Marcus exhaled, relieved. Then she reminded him of the one exception, beaming. "But only as long as nobody touches me." Marcus closed his eyes for a heartbeat. Opened them. "Fine." Arabella grinned. "Fair." The house at the tip of the little bay was the same as it had always been. Imposing. Stone and dark wood. Windows like watchful eyes, sitting above the sheltered water as if the sea belonged to it. Marcus looked at the bay and had one thought, sudden and vivid. The singing siren would look beautiful anchored here. Safe, too. They'd weathered storms in worse shelters. He realized with a jolt that he was imagining bringing his pirate ship home as if that were a reasonable thing. He wasn't the same. They were announced, led through familiar corridors that smelled of polish and old money. Servants stared too long at Arabella's glittering dress and too quickly at Marcus's silver wrists. News traveled through houses faster than fire. They were brought to a bedchamber. Lord Ison lay in bed, propped up on pillows. Age had sharpened him rather than softened him, face narrow, eyes hard. If illness had weakened him, it hadn't dulled his authority. Marcus bowed. Arabella curtsied perfectly. Lord Ison's gaze locked on Marcus. "Son," he said, coldly formal. "Father," Marcus replied. The air tightened. Lord Ison looked at Arabella, his eyes narrowed. Something flickered. Calculation, contempt, curiosity. Then his mouth tightened and he barked, "Take the child outside." A servant stepped forward and reached for Arabella's arm. Marcus moved without thinking. He shoved the servant hard enough to stagger him back. Steel flashed. Arabella had a blade in her hand, small, bright, and terrifying in the way of children's violence. For one heartbeat, the angelic little girl in a pretty dress looked exactly like what she was, a pirate princess. A child trained to fight first and ask questions later. Marcus exhaled through his nose, deeply tired. He kept his voice calm. "You do not touch Arabella," he said to the servant, "if you value your life." The servant stared, white-faced, at the knife. Marcus glanced at the others in the room, another servant, a guard, Lord Ison himself. "Spread it around the house," Marcus continued, because it was better to be blunt now than bury bodies later. "You do not touch her. She will do the worst she can. That's what has kept her alive so far. She's not old enough yet to afford discretion." Arabella blinked up at him, knife still in hand. Marcus softened his voice just slightly. "Arabella, love, go find Green. He's unloading our trunks. Check out our rooms." Arabella slipped the knife away as fast as it had appeared. She curtsied again, perfectly sweet. "Yes, Papa. Yes, Grandfather." Then she walked out like a little lady, as if none of it had happened. Lord Ison stared after her. Something in his expression shifted. He understood, suddenly, that his son might be soft. But the people Marcus was connected to now were not. Even the little girl by his side was already hard as steel. Still, Lord Ison was not smart enough to hold his mouth. When the door shut, his eyes snapped back to Marcus. "So," Lord Ison said, voice laced with contempt, "you were taken, held for ransom. And 6 months later, I hear my missing son has been seen in Port Isenton sitting on a man's lap like a common tavern hussy." Marcus's face went still. "It isn't an improvement," Lord Ison continued, "that the man turns out to be Trey Blacksail, or that Captain Blacksail is a woman, or that you claim she has borne you a daughter, with pirates the paternity." "Enough," Marcus said. The single word cracked the air. Lord Ison blinked, surprised. Marcus of old would have swallowed it. Marcus of old would have cried later, alone. Marcus of now stood straighter. "What sort of man ignores a ransom on his son?" Marcus demanded, voice shaking with anger he no longer apologized for. "What sort of father hears his child is taken and does nothing?" Lord Ison's jaw tightened. "Rain said—" "Rain is dead," Marcus snapped and watched the flinch land. "And even when he lived, he wasn't the one you should have listened to." Lord Ison's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." Marcus laughed once, humorless. "My tone? You left me to Trey Blacksail. You abandoned me to pirates, and you want to scold me for my tone?" Lord Ison's face reddened. Marcus pushed on, because the words had been rotting in him for years. "I was glad to be left. Do you understand that? I was happier chained to a pirate's bed than I ever was in this house, and that makes you a shit father." Marcus swallowed, then said the next truth, the one that would hurt the most because it was crude and undeniable. "And Arabella is mine," Marcus said, voice low. "Absolutely mine. Nothing is an accident with Trey Blacksail." He forced the words out. "She was still living as a man. She used me like a prize stallion, father, for a child that would expose her but wanted anyway. I couldn't have refused, even if I had wanted to. I did not want to. I was completely hers by then. Her demanding my child felt like a blessing I had not earned, father." Lord Ison's face drained of color. His son was clearly serious. The blunt way he put it left no room for doubt. Silence fell, heavy and exhausted. Marcus stood there, breathing hard. He felt strange, raw, but lighter. Lord Ison looked at him with complicated eyes. Marcus was still soft. Yes, he would always be soft. But he was not uncertain anymore, not apologetic, not naive. He was a man who knew who he was and had made peace with it. A man who had someone to protect, and someone who protected him. And somehow, to Lord Ison's surprise, it made him more of a man than he had ever been. Reluctantly, he had to allow respect to settle in his chest for the son he had never thought much of, and had seldom thought of at all until his heir died and his own life wore thin. He had let the boy down, utterly and completely. And now he was here, silver on his wrists and a dangerous little girl by his side, grown into a man he might not approve of but had no right to reproach. Lord Ison swallowed. His voice, when it came, was quieter. "I'm sorry. I should have answered the ransom." Marcus blinked, startled. Lord Ison stared at the coverlet as if it were safer than Marcus's face. "I listened to Rain. I told myself you would be fine, that you'd come home ashamed and learn something useful from it." He looked up again. His eyes were bright. "I was wrong." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He didn't trust himself to speak. "I'm sorry," Lord Ison said again, and the words sounded like they hurt. "For abandoning you. For not being a better father." Marcus stood frozen. Lord Ison exhaled shakily. "I'm tired. Go." "But—" His gaze flicked to the door Arabella had gone through. "Bring the child tomorrow. I may only have a few weeks. I'd like to know my grandchild." Marcus swallowed. "Yes, I will." Lord Ison nodded once, a dismissal. He closed his eyes. Marcus left before either of them could say something that would ruin the fragile apology. Arabella was supervising green unloading trunks when Marcus found them. She stood with her hands behind her back like a little officer, directing the coachman with cheerful authority. Green looked long-suffering. The coachman looked terrified. Arabella spotted Marcus and waved. "Papa, grandfather's house is huge." Marcus managed a smile. "Yes, it is." As they moved through the house toward their rooms, Marcus noticed something subtle with satisfaction. People gave Arabella space. Servants who would normally pat a child's head did not. Guards who might have blocked a hallway stepped aside. Eyes followed her with cautious respect. News had spread. "Do not touch the child if you value your life." Arabella, oblivious, hummed to herself and inspected tapestries as if she owned the place. When they were settled, Arabella ran off to explore. Green stationed himself by the door like a grim sentinel. Marcus, restless, went for a walk. The gardens were as he remembered. Trim hedges, old stone paths, a view of the sea framed by cypress trees. He walked until his anger cooled into something heavier. Then he saw a familiar figure by the herb beds. A young man now, taller than Marcus remembered, hair darker, shoulders broader. He wore work clothes and had dirt under his nails. He turned at the sound of footsteps and stared. "Master Marcus?" he breathed. Marcus's chest tightened. "Pip!" Pip's face broke into relief so intense it was almost pain. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides and grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. "You're alive!" Pip said, voice rough. You're here!" Marcus laughed shakily. "I'm here." Pip stepped back, eyes scanning Marcus, fine coat, groomed hair, silver on his wrists. Confusion flickered, but he didn't ask. Not yet. "I work here now," Pip said, gesturing awkwardly. "Groundskeeper. Lord Ison kept me on after I brought the message." He swallowed. "I could not believe it when I heard they were going to ignore the ransom." Marcus's throat tightened again. Pip looked at him, eyes bright. "I thought you'd never come back." Marcus stared out at the sea beyond the hedges, where the bay glittered and empty water waited. "I'm not sure I have," he said quietly. Pip didn't understand, but he nodded anyway, because Pip had always been good at accepting what Marcus couldn't explain. "Come on," Pip said after a moment. "I'll show you what's changed." Marcus followed him down the garden path, silver bracelets catching the light, the map tube with the marriage certificate heavy in his trunk upstairs like a secret weapon. And somewhere, beyond the estate walls, the sea kept moving. Somewhere out there, Trey Blacksail waited, itching teeth and calculating mind, counting the days until she could come back for them.